Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined by football analyst William Gardner. It's been kind of a gloomy day here in Colorado. It looks like the sun's maybe creeping out there over your left shoulder there. No?
Actually, it's a total whiteout. I'm on the 52nd floor of
Okay.
the tallest building in Denver, and I'm in the clouds. It's a total whiteout out there. But I was if you say I'm doing a little film study with Adam up here, teaching him the wishbone.
One of these days, we're going to find ourselves, hopefully, at a point in our lives where we both have free time, William, and we're going to be coaching buddies. We're going to get out there. I don't know what level it's going to be at, but we're going to do it.
Yeah, well, if we wait much longer, I'll be done with a walker. So
Okay. All right.
yeah, we
So
better hurry it up. Except I'll be coaching you how to fish. That's what we'll be doing because I'll be sitting in a boat somewhere.
Well, we have a lot to talk about the current Colorado coaches on this defensive staff, and we still don't know who the full-time defensive line coach is going to be going forward. Warren Sapp told Neely of the pregame show that he is looking to continue to kind of be just that mentor in the room. As he said, it kind of pours sap on top of everything else. And so
Yeah.
you want to find the right chemistry to work with him. And obviously George Hilo at the edge group, because that was one of the constant things we heard throughout that successful 2024 season was those front seven guys were working really well together. Even Andre Hart thrown in there. So you want to find the right chemistry there. Neely's hinted that it's going to be a big time hire. Anxious to find out who that's going to be.
Yeah, and we'll get that. I mean, it always seems to work out, and we get nervous waiting, and then it works out, and it's somebody good, and we're excited about it. So I'm sure it will be again this time, and hopefully we have the same sort of chemistry and production as last year, if not more. So the players are there, and I think with Sapp in that same role, and Hilo should be as good as um, Dancy was, I think, and we'll see how it goes.
And you look back to last year, and that was one of the better defensive lines in terms of depth. There wasn't, outside of BJ Green, there weren't like all conference guys that were putting their hand in the ground on that group, but you saw a lot of production out of there. I mean, there's a reason that Nikai Hill-Green and Vonta Bentley did what they did, and the edge group led the Big 12 in sacks. Like they had help by that interior defensive line group. This year's D line group, when you look at who they return and who they add, I think the depth has improved. In fact, I think there's a possibility this could be one of the best defensive lines in the entire conference. And we saw Williams for so many years. That's what kept Utah going back to those Pac-12 championships
Yeah.
year after year. And so if there's list of reasons for optimism with this Colorado football team, that D-line group is in the top 5 for sure, and maybe even higher.
Well, I think it might be better than last year because I think, we had solid performance all the way across the defensive line last year. And I think in the interior 2 or 3 guys this year, I think we're going to go beyond just steady and solid. And I think we're going to get havoc. We're going to get plays for loss. And if you look at how Amari McNeil finished the year last year with really making a lot of tackles behind the line and tackles for loss and third down stops, fourth down stops, and then you bring in Jaheim Otis, Anquin Barnes started to do some of that too. So I think we're going to take it up a notch up front at all those positions, and we're just waiting a little bit for the coaching to find out how we do that. So if we're talking about a defense and I was having a debate with some folks on the board about the value of what I was calling first round draft pick type defensive tackles and the kind of difference that they make in a game to me is more important than a superior quarterback in many respects, because you can run an offense with a good quarterback, a decent quarterback, but if you're trying to run an offense against first round draft pick type defensive tackles, you're going to have a hard time.
One of the guys in there that I feel like I'm now overlooking is Tavion Coleman coming from Texas Tech. He reminds me a little bit of Shane Cokes in the sense that he's not going to be this huge stat guy, but man, he seems to really do his job in there. And I could see him being a real valuable part of that rotation. You bring in Gabriel Lightfoot as well after playing a lot of snaps at Fresno State. You got a lot of guys you can rotate through there. Obviously, I think Jaheim Otis is kind of the guy that has the highest ceiling out of that group in the sense that injuries derailed some of his experience at Alabama. Prior to that, they projected him as a first-round NFL draft pick.
Yeah, and I think part of what made last year's line so effective was that they went three lines deep on defensive at the defensive tackle. I mean, they played six guys pretty regularly, and they platooned them. So there was a first two, a second two, and a third two. And I think we're going to be able to do that again this year. And you look at Tavion Coleman. I think you said Texas Tech. I think it was Texas State though, but
Texas State, yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
and he's actually so he's 6'1", 300, and he's a look at trying to he did 2 years of community college, 2 years at Texas State, 1 year in the middle of Utah State. So he's actually a sixth year senior, which means he's a grown ass man, and he's a big dude. And like you said, he had I was looking at his stats: 79 tackles, 19 for a loss, and 7 sacks over the last 3 seasons. And that's pretty good production. And then Gabriel Lightfoot coming from Fresno State, where he spent all of his time. He's a fourth-year junior. They list him at 6'3", 300. Looking at him in the videos, I'm not sure I'm buying the 6'3", but I buy the 300 because he's pretty stout. And he's another guy, played all 3 seasons at Fresno State. And he was actually, it noted in his bio that he's the youngest player in the FBS when he started his season opener in 2022. So he's a fourth-year guy, but he's a young fourth-year guy. And so there's a lot of development left ahead of him, and he was very effective for Fresno State. So I think when you look at the defensive tackles we have here, I think Amari McNeil is without a doubt an all-conference caliber player. If he continues to improve on what he did last year, he could be even more than that. And so I think Anquan Barnes at times was dominant, and they couldn't block him. His problem is consistency.
In the false starts, he's got to get that down too, because I know that was an issue at times. But a part of that, I think, is he was so anxious to get out there and make a play. Which you like the aggressiveness. We got to dial that just back maybe 1%.
Well, he and Jaheim Otis, both coming from Alabama, are both those huge, just massive, unbelievably big guys. Like you look at Jaheim Otis standing next to Jordan Seaton, and Otis is bigger, according to my lying eyes. And then, we'll go 6 deep again with this group. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I'm looking at, I think there's 7, because, we haven't even talked about Torian Carter and Tawfiq Thomas. And Torian Carter was the starter at the beginning of the season last year, and then he got hurt. So, he has a lot to bring to the table. And Tawfiq Thomas was, I think, I would say he was in that sort of third group, but he was playing regularly and making things happen. And so you got 7 older guys who can really get something. You got 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had to use my fingers. 7 older guys who have played a lot of college football to platoon in there and rotate and keep guys fresh. And every single one of them is 300 or bigger. So, you remember the days when we were lucky to get a guy over 290, and now we're loaded with them. And as you mentioned, Otis is the guy. Well, frankly, if Otis and Barnes both hit their potential, they're both draft pick type of guys. If they get there, okay, it's a big if, but I've seen video of Otis playing for Alabama against SEC teams where he's just chucking SEC linemen like trash bags. So I think it's going to be exciting to watch this group, and we got a guy, we got a freshman incoming, Christian Hudson, who I think would be pretty excited about in most years, but he ain't seeing the field with unless somebody gets hurt.
Alex McPherson will see the field though this year. Based on what we've heard.
but he's a different guy, and he could play different. But he's like 6'5", rangy type of a guy, so they can use him in a lot of different ways. So he could be inside on a third and long. He could be. He's not the guy I think I would want out there. On first and 10. They're going to run the ball and such because he's not going to have that much. He's not going to be big enough yet, but he's a guy that can fill a lot of roles. Christian Hudson, by all accounts from people down in Florida, he was an unblockable dude down there, 6'1", maybe 6'1". I think Christian Hudson's limitation is going to be his height, but what he does as a player is really unquestioned. So we got some guys on the interior, hand in the ground type of guys. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, obviously I meant offsides with Barnes, not false starts. I hate editing these podcasts, so I like to correct myself in the moment.
No, I knew what you meant, though. It
made
perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So I got it.
Taufiq Thomas was one of the guys I kind of consider for a breakout candidate just because he's not talked about a whole lot. I went with Torian Carter, who you mentioned, for a story I ran on BuffStampede.com the other day. 10 returning buffs that are set to break out. I'm going to do another feature tomorrow, 10 new Buffaloes that are primed for a big impact in the program. This is kind of a fun season to catch your breath a little bit and really dive into these guys. And the D-line is one of those groups where you keep going back to and feel really confident that this is going to be a top-notch group. Edge group was fantastic last year, led the Big 12, like I mentioned earlier, in sacks. You bring back the bulk of that. Deion Hayes has gone off to Texas A&M, but he was hurt beyond those first four games of this past season. So you bring back the talent there. I just want to have a little Arden Walker love fest here. A guy that went off. He wanted to be a buff out of high school. He really did. I knew Arden enough to know that. But, where Colorado's program was, it was not in a place where a stud out of Cherry Creek was going to go. And he was kind of torn late in the process. There was, I don't know if you remember this signing day coverage, but like he didn't sign his letter of intent right away. Like he actually had to take a second. He goes out to Missouri, cuts his teeth, and starting games late in that second season out there, comes back home, and he's one of the best personalities on this football team. And I've just really enjoyed the linear progress he's had as a buff, because by the end of last season, he was close to a well-rounded outside linebacker as they had in this program, I thought.
Yeah. Well, and I think people, I think there was a all conference team or something came out and people were surprised to see him listed on there. I wasn't, because I think he was every bit as good as BJ Green and anybody else on that edge group. But Arden Walker was arguably the best edge guy we had last year in terms of playing both the run and the pass and doing a little bit of everything. In those last few games, he was actually kind of dominant and kind of all over the place. So I think Arden Walker takes another step forward, because every season he's gotten a little bit better. If he gets a little bit better this year, now he's playing for being able to play the game in the future. And I think he's got a future at the next level.
Yeah. You can tell he's a student of the game too. The way he sets the edge is picture perfect most of the time. And that's something that a lot of these guys that, it's great to rack up all these pressures and sacks, but he's doing what he's supposed to do within the framework of the defense, which sometimes can kind of limit your stats a little bit, right?
Well, given his, it can, but given who his father is as a legendary defensive tackle for the Buffs, Arthur Walker, and Art Walker was a great interior lineman for the Buffs and one of the key pieces of the championship team in 1990 and those early 90s teams, along with Joel Steed. And Art Walker coached him at Cherry Creek. So there's no question why he's got such good technique. But Arden Walker plays the position the way it's supposed to, which is you play both. This is why he's gonna make it in the NFL, I think, too, is because he can play the run and the pass, and I think his pass rushing skills are getting better and better. But I think Arden Walker can be one of the better outside linebackers in the entire country, frankly, not just our conference.
I look at this edge group and tell me how you feel about it. I see Arden Walker is and Samuel Okunlola as kind of these any down, you could put those guys out there. They could help you out there. Keaton Wade and Tajay McCoy at this point, I would probably strike more as kind of that pass rush, not specialist, but more those downs where you feel like those strengths are going to be utilized best against the opposing offense. Like they've got a good dynamic there. But to me, Arden Walker and Samuel Okunlola are the two guys I project more as starters because of kind of their all around ability.
Yeah, and I think that people are sleeping on Sammy Okunlola, and he's just starting to scratch the surface of his potential and talent. And he's an NFL guy. He just needs to keep on growing and keep getting bigger. And he's going to break out. And I think he's going to be a junior this year, I guess. But he's just coming along and was quietly very solid last year, very solid on setting the edge for the run, and maybe secondary a little bit in the pass rush. But if you put him and Arden Walker out there, you're not going to run the ball on this front. You're not going to do it. And they can both are guys who can be dangerous in the pass rush. Keaton Wade's a little bit more of I wouldn't call him a pass rush specialist because he was doing things beyond the pass rush last year where every time you put him out there, he was just kind of electric and made big plays, whether it's against the run or the pass. And I saw him a lot of times. He wasn't necessarily on the edge. They would play him a little bit inside, and he would just make things happen. So I think Keaton Wade got his feet wet last year and is really going to come on this year as a senior. I mean, he's going to have that sort of, my last season desperation. I got to show something if I want to keep playing this game. And then, Tajay McCoy is the best pass rusher on his team. And I think he'll show that this year. Damn near did last year in somewhat limited play, but I think people saw the quickness off the snap, and as he starts to refine some of that, work with Hilo and such, I think we're going to be the best defensive front in the Big 12 for sure, and we'll lead in sacks again. We're going to be a sack machine again, given the edge guys, and we're going to get sacks from the interior more, I think, this year as well. So I think that it's pretty exciting. And then, I don't know, most years in the last 10 years, we'd be gushing over a guy like London Merritt, who is a first-rate freaking talent, yeah. The freshman, man. And I don't, unless he just blows the lid off, there's not an obvious route to playing time because the guys ahead of him are so damn good, and
yeah,
and we've sort of left out Quincy Wiggins, and he's a guy that if it ever comes together would be something very special. But until it does, he's sort of behind the rest.
Well, yeah, credit to Quincy Wiggins for continuing to stay in the program, continuing to work, and he's got at least ability on special teams this coming season. But the Keaton Wade story was one of the best of the season because it wasn't until that Texas Tech game where he came out of nowhere. Everybody thought he was maybe out for the season because he was hurt all preseason, and all of a sudden, he had 2 sacks in that game. Yeah. And then he just continued to, every time you put him out there, he was making a big play to the point where Keaton Wade told us I was planning to redshirt, and then Coach Prime comes in and says, "You're too good. You can't redshirt."
Well, and I remember having debates with people on the board. People were like, "Well, he should redshirt for his own good." I'm like, "Well, the purpose of redshirting is to give you more time to get to where you need to be." He's there. He's there. He was so dominant in the second half of the season. It would have been stupid to redshirt at that point. You are there where you need to be. What are you going to gain? So he needs to come out this year and just really build on that. I think they're going to have, if all these guys play up to their potential and get better, man, we're going to be loaded and they're going to have some tough playing decisions to make, but we haven't even mentioned Brandon Davis Swain, who I'm not quite sure where he's going to wind up, given that he's getting bigger and might wind up with a hand on the ground. But there's a lot of talent in this front line, defensive line and edge group, and I think it's better than last year.
Yeah. Tajay McGoy has the quickest first step I've seen covering Colorado. I would love to see some type of drill that they could do to where they blow a whistle or something and they just clock how a defensive end or edge guy, outside linebacker, gets to, I don't know what, like 3-4 yards to just kind of gauge how quick that is. Because I've never seen it quicker than what he does.
Yeah, I used to talk about when I was coaching defensive line and outs and then pass rush on the edge and stuff is like, if you're doing a speed rush, you want to get hip to hip with that tackle in two strides, right? So then you get hip to hip, and now you can take his hand down and you go around him. And he's there faster than that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's like it's not. You can't. It doesn't even compute with what other people do. And I think it's only going to get better as he gets more physically mature and gets bigger and stronger and learns some techniques. And when he learns to use that inside hand, and keep those hands off of him, and then, so you get good at this one, you bat down that hand, and then you can come up with like this one and take it the other way because they start, a good tackle is going to try to adjust, right? Adjust and get his hand up so you can't knock it down. All right, well, and then you knock it in this way. And that's where a guy like Warren Sapp and George Hilo can really teach him some of those tricks.
Yeah, George Hilo, who you mentioned, is going to be coaching that group. Somebody that has spent a lot of time working with linebackers. He's been a special teams coach in the past. Obviously, last year he was Robert Livingston's eyes up in the press box. He's, from everything we've heard, a really good defensive mind. So he kind of knows where that edge
Yeah.
group fits in. He has not coached that specific position before.
And what's going to make Tajay McCoy even better, even faster? Who's he going against in practice every day?
Jordan
Jordan Seaton,
Seaton.
right? And both of them, iron sharpens iron. Those two cats are going to just be waging war in there. And it's going to be great for Jordan Seaton because he ain't going to see anybody quicker in games than this kid. And this guy is not going to see anybody at left tackle better than Jordan Seaton. So it's one of those sort of things where they're just going to build each other up and up and up. And when they get into games, it's going to be almost easy compared to what they see in practice.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com.
On March 1st, William and I will be at the Hungry Toad in Boulder, Colorado, 2543 Broadway. We're talking just north of the Pearl Street area in Boulder. And we're excited. We've got a bunch of BuffStampede.com contributors that are going to come out there. Sean Niehoff is coming out. My wife Liz is going to be there. Our photographer extraordinaire, Dane Barron, our board moderator, is planning to come out. And I know we've gotten a few other RSVPs on the message board. So I'm excited to try some of this great English food and just the atmosphere that we have with some of our listeners out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have to get there early, and I'll get there. I'm coming from that trial competition, so it'll be fun, and I'll be looking to get myself a double cheeseburger and some fries and start drinking beers.
That's going to be March 1st, 6 p.m. at the Hungry Toad, 2543 Broadway, and Hanson Rod is going to, I think, be there as well to maybe talk to us. We enjoyed chatting with him recently before one of our shows.
Yeah, for sure. And he's a good guy, and they got good food and good beer, and get out there and talk some CU stuff, and I don't know, maybe they have to throw us out or something.
No, we are very respectful. We've done these meetups before, and it's always a great time. We end up getting into some stories that maybe none of us expected to get into, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're talking about the John Embry era randomly, and you're just kind of sharing these fun stories. So it's always fun to catch up with folks out there. William, the linebacker position to me is the most intriguing going into spring ball because I can make some guesses here. I like going into spring ball, I would maybe guess that Reginald Hughes and Martavius French could be this decent or much better type duo at linebacker, but you've got some other pieces there. I don't know if you need to bring in more competition through the portal after the spring. That's going to be, I think, kind of based on these practices coming up.
Yeah, and I think we got to see what happens in spring. But you look at Martavius French and Reginald Hughes, and they're very similar kinds of guys. They're both around 6'2", 240, and both racked up a lot of tackles at their last places and are thumpers and guys that'll hit a guy. And so, I think that they can step in and I don't know if they'll play up to the level of Nikai Hill Green, but at this time last year, we didn't expect Nikai Hill Green to play up to that level either. So yeah, you watch them out there. And so Reginald Hughes, he's coming from Jacksonville State, but before that, he was at Ole Miss, and so all these guys have a connection somewhere else. I think. What am I looking at here? If I remember correctly, I think Reginald Hughes maybe he started out at Tennessee. So all these guys have come from somewhere like that, and the guy
he played 12 games at Ole Miss. Reginald Hughes.
I thought I guess I'm getting him confused with Martavius. So French then I think started at Tennessee way back.
Yeah, French started out in the JC, then went to Tennessee, and then went to UTSA. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you look at those two guys, and they're both prototypically looking linebacker type guys, and then you got Jeremiah Brown, who I thought played damn good ball in the spring last year, and he's a guy that I think is much better in coverage necessarily than stopping the run between the tackles. Not that he can't do that, but he's a guy that gives you a different angle on things. Jalen Wester, I feel like got a little bit exposed in the bowl game, but it wasn't really fair to throw him into that situation so quick, I don't think. But I think he's still got something to add. And then the guy that kind of intrigues me is Kylan Salter, who comes from TCU and is another one of these big guys, big 240 guys, and highly rated. Comes from another Big 12 team and is really kind of ready to make his breakout. I hope because he'll be a sophomore. I think would he be a third year guy and really looks like. I mean, when you see him, you go, that's what a linebacker looks like. That kid looks good. So I think he's a guy that I'm looking forward to see what he brings to the mix this spring as well.
Yeah, Hughes was a guy that was more of kind of the linebacker that really had success rushing the passer and getting pressures. And you had French that was a guy that just didn't miss tackles, was kind of more of a leader in terms of just his overall presence defensively. So I could see, Martavius being the Mike, maybe Reginald being the Will, and then you've got maybe like a Jeremiah Brown that was kind of playing the Trevor Woods dime linebacker role last year.
Yeah, or filling in at different times and different things. The thing about French that stands out to me is that he's been all conference mentioned at two different places. He was second team all conference at Texas San Antonio, and then he was honorable mention all conference way back at Hutchinson Community College. So all throughout his career, you got to be productive to get all conference mention, especially I think he would have been like a sophomore at Hutchinson and to get all conference mention at that level says you're really doing something right. So Martavius French is one of those guys at linebacker who just makes things happen. He makes plays happen, and then you were talking like with Reginald Hughes. I mean, he had his stats last season were fantastic, 83 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 9.5 tackles for loss, and then 6 quarterback hurries. So like you said, he's a guy that really gets after the quarterback from that inside linebacker position. But he's also really big and hits people too in the run game. So I think we can follow up on what we had last year in terms of those 2 linebackers and feel pretty good about it. And the nice thing is they shouldn't have to deal with blockers. They should just be able to roam free and make plays.
Yeah, and we have not mentioned Montrez Walker, who, again,
right.
like you said, in some of these other spots, like with London Merritt's, like,
Right.
man, we would have been talking much
Right.
more about him if you had not built up some depth in this program.
Right. And I mean, Montrez Walker, most years in the last before last year and this year is a true freshman. He's as good a true freshman linebacker as I've seen in a long damn time at Colorado. And that kid, he is the prototype of the hit you in the mouth guy. He hits every bit as hard as Nikai Hill Green, So Montrez Walker, he's not quite as tall and rangy as Nikai Hill Green, but he has got a game. And I kind of feel like he's going to get away on the field because he's sort of, even if it's just on special teams, because he's one of those guys that gets things done, and he's one of those true freshmen that has a motor and very exciting. It's clearly a Mike linebacker to me type. I guess built more along the lines of Levante Bentley in terms of his body size and build, but he's an exciting one as well.
I'm not sure if it was warranted, but I felt like Andre Hart took some flack from Colorado fans his first year at the job. But I thought when you looked at the production of his group and just guys getting better, it was hard to find a group that exceeded expectations more than that linebackers group did last year. And he had talent there, but he's a big reason why. He's got a great personality. There's a reason guys want to come play for him. Montrez Walker had a ton of other offers, and very early on, he developed a very strong relationship with Hart. So it's been good to see his group really kind of start to flourish a little bit.
Yeah, and they really showed it last year. And they, for the most of the season, they only played a couple of guys and got fortunate without injuries and such like that. I think we'll have a lot more depth this year, and going into spring, I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that I could see getting playing time. And we'll see in spring which ones really step forward and take charge of things. But I'm kind of excited about all these guys. I don't know if you remember back towards the end of the season. I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a video that highlighting LeJohntay Wester talking about his brother Jalen and how he's going to live up to his potential and step forward and be a guy who can really be counted on at that inside backer. So if that happens, that's even more talent depth in there.
Yeah, no question. Cornerback is again loaded, and I think you could at least pencil in. Well, you could put in pen probably DJ McKinney as a starter, right? And then maybe pencil in Preston Hodges and nickelback, Colton Hood as the other cornerback. But you've got Ivan Yates coming back, Isaiah Harge is still in the program. We'll see what his primary role is going to be. RJ Johnson mentioned earlier this spring, he's more a cornerback this year. I think we know who the top 3 guys are going to be throughout spring ball, but you've at least got some depth there now. We haven't heard a whole lot about Malachi Murphy or Ben Boozy in the program yet, but you've got a pretty good group there coming back.
Yeah, and I think you got to get Isaiah Harge a lot of play at the cornerback in the spring. And I don't know what if he ends up playing a little bit both ways in fall, that's fine. But you got to get him ready because you're going to play 4 cornerbacks. And he needs to be ready to step in there and do that. But you mentioned in your breakout article that Colton Hood, by all rights, should have been a starter last year, but look who was sitting behind, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of nuts. It's kind of nuts to be looking at a position where you lose the Heisman Trophy winner and saying, "Yeah, we're okay, we're good."
Yeah, Colton Hood he's a man possessed at times out there.
Oh my God, yeah. And he, I felt, he had those 2 long returns that the one of them, I think he tripped over the damn yard line.
Preston Hodge's back foot there.
Back foot, yeah. And he had those those two long returns, and then he didn't get the touchdown on one. So hopefully this year he breaks that one back. But with Hodge and McKinney, you got a hell of a pair of cornerbacks right there. And I think any year that you didn't have Travis Hunter at cornerback, these two guys would have got a lot more notice, I think.
Yeah, no question. And I think with Harge, he's been working a lot at nickelback. And he's not, maybe, if you saw him in street clothes, the guy you go, that's a nickelback right there. But if you watch him on special teams coverage, he comes to hit. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Harge, and I see why Coach Prime has really fallen in love with that kid too.
Yeah, and I, getting to wearing a gray shirt and playing both directions and whatever. And was he the one that had the long reception where he ran over three guys at the goal line? Or
Draylon Miller, I think you're thinking.
Was that Draylon Miller? Okay, yeah, because I think back on that play, I'm like, man, that was an eye opener of a. We got some guys on this team that want it, man.
Yeah,
and you look at a lot of. One of the problems with CU football before Coach Prime was we had a lot of guys who were just content to be there, man. I got my scholarship, I got my uniform, I go out and play the game. But, a guy that's going to take that play like that I'm thinking of, and basically just drag three guys into the end zone, that's a guy that wants it, and that's a guy who's like, I'm not content. So, I'm not content to sit behind a guy just because he's the Heisman Trophy winner. I want to play and I want to win. And we got a lot of those kinds of guys. Harge is one of them, and Colton Hood is one of them. And it's just kind of exciting. I don't know. I mean, Johnson, I guess, could play there at cornerback. And we'll move to the safeties here in a second.
They might need him at safety if they're not going to add some guys there. Well, I feel like that's a position you need more scholarship guys. Right now they have 5 scholarship guys at safety if you don't have RJ Johnson in that group.
And that's what I was getting at, is that I think we're going to have to add some defensive back guys, at some point before summer in this next portal, looking for some guys there to have a little bit more depth. There's some real talent there, but feels a little short on bodies maybe.
Yeah. Carter Stoutmeyer is the first guy I would mention at the safeties group. Swiss Army knife for the Buffaloes, but I felt like last year the word was that he was going to move to safety, and then he comes back and he's kind of needed all over the place. He played in, I think Pro Football Focus had him lining up in 5 different spots defensively this past season, so he kind of played where they needed him to. I'd like to see him settle in at safety. Sometimes I don't feel like when he's been at safety, that's been the best look for him, but he also has not been able to play that position a ton. And his father was a longtime NFL safety, so he's got a great resource at home beyond, the coaches at Colorado. Yeah. So he's a guy I could see really thriving this year. I think you got to mention with this group too, William, is that the heart and soul of this defense, Cameron Silman Craig, is gone. And so they're going to have to find some guys that are going to, have a little bit of that dog mentality to kind of raise up the secondary. Right. I think you got it's at cornerback, but at safety, you need that too.
Well, I mean, I think we got some of those guys here too. And I think, people forget, Carter Stoutmeyer filled in for, for God's sakes, Shiloh Sanders, when he was out with his broken arm, and did a pretty damn good job, to the extent that some people were saying, oh, he should stay out there, which I think was silly. But I think Carter Stoutmeyer is one of those guys, and the guy that I keep waiting for, the guy that you see out there without pad and you go, that's a player, and you want to see the play start to match up to it, is Savion Riley. The guy looks like a linebacker, for Christ's sake, and I want to see his play start to match his abilities. And then we bring in 2 really good transfers that are fairly young in Makari Vickers and Tawfiq Bayard, and I think those 2 guys bring something to the table as well. And we'll fight for some playing time or what have you. So there's some talent out there. RJ Johnson, we've mentioned, is going to be all he might be that Carter Stoutmeyer Swiss Army knife guy at 5 different spots this year, but and then Antonio Branch has got a future in front of him as well. So, I think there's some guys out there, and they just got to figure out what the pecking order is, I think.
Yeah. Antonio Branch is a little bit like Isaiah Harge in the sense that he plays bigger than his frame.
Yeah,
But man, he's so skinny coming in, and
yeah,
I mean, special teams maybe could come in for him this year. He's going to be a really good player. I mean, they put him in the box at Miami Northwestern. He was asked to really be the catalyst of that defense, and
right.
is going to be a really good player. It just, I mean, you got to mature just a little bit physically, I think, for this
Yeah,
level.
yeah. We got a few guys on this team that need that, and I think we got enough guys in front of them. And again, that's why I think we need to bring in another guy maybe this uh late spring and summer. But we'll see what they do in the spring ball. I don't know. There's some talent,
Yeah.
like you say that would they you know that safety group needs that leader, and I have to feel like it's Stoutmeyer, but we'll see. I mean, if guys like Byard and Vickers coming in as new guys are going to want to establish themselves and prove something too. So we'll see what happens with that group.
Or maybe
You know,
Colton Hood will just continue to fire up that
yeah,
entire
yeah,
secondary. I could see him being a guy that is
yeah,
in the middle of huddles, just getting guys fired up at some point.
yeah. And who'd you say?
Colton Hood.
Yeah, yeah. And then the guy we haven't mentioned as a safety, who's listed as a safety, who probably lays more hits than anybody on his team, is Ben Finiseth.
How could you definitely, I thank you for bringing him up. I would feel remiss if we finished this show
My
without
God,
mentioning
man,
him.
I somebody needs to go back and do a mashup of like kickoff coverage hits between him and who was the other guy that was always knocking people's heads clean off was God, I can't
Tajay
remember.
McCoy and Brendan
Yeah,
Gant was out there doing that as well.
Brendan Gant,
Yeah,
who's I was
yeah,
thinking of. Yeah, and
yeah.
those three guys. I mean, Finiseth was like I think a guy got hit by a car out here. What the hell?
He's a very unique, special individual, and I mean that in every positive
Yeah,
way possible.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he's a mechanical engineering major or chemical engineering major or something like that. He's an engineering major, and he plays like his hair is on fire every time he's out
yeah.
there.
Right,
You got to, and his personality off the field is even
right,
better than all that. So, yeah,
right.
I messed up. I thought he was done with his eligibility. We did like a season recap show, and I was like, oh man, I'm bummed out Ben Finiseth is going to be back. And then he pops up on one of those early winter videos, and it was like, you find out like your favorite restaurant's opening around the corner. It was like, yes, we get another year of Ben Finiseth in this
Yeah,
program.
yeah. Well, and I don't know. All you clowns talking about keep kicking the ball into the end zone on kickoffs. Blank you, man. What the hell fun is that? I want to see dudes get run over by a truck.
Buck Buchanan is going to ruin all that. I guess we have to do a
I know,
special
right? I mean,
teams
what the hell?
a whole special teams recap. We can't just tie in your love for Alejandro Mata at the end of this show. So we got to come back with a
Well,
special
I
special
don't know
team
if,
show.
well, we're going to have to come up with something else involved with it because I think we could I could do my special teams recap in about 5 minutes, but I think we just did my special teams recap. But you guys don't like my version of special teams where people run down and run into each other.
Yeah, it still throws me off when you tune into an NFL game and they have that new kickoff. It just does not look right to me, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Well, every year I ever coached, I coached the kickoff coverage and the punt coverage because that's what I love to do. And it's all about discipline and desire and doing your job the way you're supposed to do it. But that's what is fun to me. And I get that guys running 50 yards full speed into each other is not good for people. But you know,
it's fun to watch though.
yeah, right. Right. So it's just like boxing's not good for people either, but we watch it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we are going to wait on that special team. So I'm sure, William, to put your angst at ease here, I'm sure we'll have a few topics to throw onto that show as well. So we can talk about some other things as well. But again, we're going back to the
Well,
Hungry Toad in Boulder, March 1st, 6 p.m. Come join us if you're a fan of the podcast or a subscriber on BuffStampede.com. We'd love to be able to get a chance to chat with you, and it should be a good time. What were you going to say?
I mean, you believe me when I say that the only transfer I care about is Damon Graves, right? You believe that, right?
Not for a second. There's a whole pro kick Australia controversy going on too
I
that we
saw
got to
that.
get into. Yeah, we got to get into all that.
Yeah.
So we'll have more to talk about than you
Maybe-
think with these special
Maybe
teams.
we could invite him onto the show because it'd be fun to have an Aussie talking to us, Mike.
They're the best. They're the best. All right, William, thanks so much for taking the time out. This was a lot of fun. And I appreciate, as always, everybody out there for tuning in.